Alright guys, HyDra back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. OpTic Tex's major weakness at Major 1 was no doubt the search and destroy play. 5 in 10 throughout the entirety of Stage 1. Not good enough quite to keep up with some of the top teams. JP Krez, OpTic's coach, has talked in some detail about what exactly in search and destroy they're mostly working on, but also Dashy and FormaL with a fair few words to say for Lynz over on the Minnesota Rocker. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Thought it was pretty funny as well from Donny Temper. I don't know if this affects you guys as well, but I know that every so often I see a tweet like this. I know that Gunless used to tweet about this quite a lot, that well, he's forgot to update the monitor settings. You get a brand new 240Hz, 360Hz, whatever they make nowadays monitor, and then you forget to change the Windows settings, so it's actually not even operating. There's probably at least a couple of you guys watching right now that this is true for, that you've got a 144Hz monitor and you're still running it on 60 FPS, which is, you know, so maybe have a look at that in the Windows settings. But as Donny Temp says, been playing at 144Hz because I forgot to turn it back to 240 after the event. I don't know if it makes that much difference. Like, I've played on 144Hz monitors. I've never played on a 240Hz monitor, I don't think. So I don't know if, like, you can really feel the difference to such an extent, but apparently you can, because Donny Temp says he got smoked by this trash player, and he had to check some settings. Some more of the more unfortunate news, though, I've got to share from the Challengers side. It's no secret that the support of the CDL lately for really everything, but especially Challengers, has been going significantly downhill. We've also seen in very recent times the Observer team, right, for the league has been let go. I don't know how many of those individuals might be hired back on a freelance basis, but it's happening everywhere. Even Riot Games, they had like a team of just, I think, 2 observers in the EMEA region, like Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and they let go one of them, so they've just got 1 now. So, you know, it's been a big trend. I think Microsoft are definitely seeing it that way as well. They're looking at the cost. They think it does this actually make sense? And I don't know, post CDL, I think that hopefully Challengers and the open system will be in a much, you know, better state. But, you know, all these boys, and it's so frustrating to me. I know that obviously Shift is now working in the league, but the whole Challengers ecosystem has really been gutted over the last couple of years, and it's so tragic how we're in year 5 of the league. The promise was that by year 3 or 4 we'd have expansion, you know, be all sunshine and rainbows, and it's literally being the opposite, right? So many of these guys, such as Brody, have just put so much time and blood, sweat and tears into the Challenger scene over the last several years, and Proper says the similar thing as well. Helping Challengers, growing the scene, committed to the storylines, and then, yeah, just receive confirmation they won't be returning to cast them because, you know, they don't want these guys. And look, it's a business at the end of the day. I get it, but it's still super frustrating to see. And I'm hopeful that, you know, post CDL or whatever you want to say, when things change around a little bit, I'm sure these guys will be back and there'll be the case for them. And I think also if you are a player in Challengers right now, it's not the worst time to be in Challengers because there is a realistic possibility that things are going to change in the near future and the scene's going to be more open and more competitive, hopefully, and also give more opportunities to just everyone in the Tier 2 ecosystem because it's not been a great trajectory over the last couple of years. So that was pretty sad. I've got to mention this for you guys as well. I thought it was very interesting though. Maps with 1+ cruise missiles earned. Players that basically go on the most 6 kill streaks to secure themselves a cruise. Now this is crucial because trophies no longer destroy cruise missiles. So getting a cruise is actually useful now. There were many times watching Major 1 where I'm like, is it even worth calling in the cruise here? Because you know they've probably got a trophy. You're just standing still for like 8 seconds while you call in this bloody missile from the sky that doesn't kill anyone anyway because this, you know, little teapot actually destroys the thing. So here we go. These are the numbers. The top players and also the worst players. Awakening is actually right at the bottom here. He's only had 1 map so far that he's got a cruise on. Assault, Priestahh also have 1. Purge has 2. Fair play. Envoy has 2. So I don't think there's any player on 0, at least of the ones that have been in the league for some time. The top players, though, Attach. He has 9 maps that he's done, and out of 37, so that's 24% of maps he gets a cruise. So, and then interesting, really, that, you know, you're not seeing that many Toronto players here. CleanX is here. Cellium's the only one here for FaZe. So really, the only representation from 2 different teams, or from 1 team, is either Attach with Attach and Nero, but also HyDra and Skyz. I think that's one of the interesting things to note, that those guys do go on pretty big kill streaks. They are big slayers. They do deliver the cruise missiles, and maybe that's something to look for New York, right? Because it's a storyline which needs to be, I would say, more prevalent than it is, that the world champions just got top 12 at their first event back since making a big blockbuster change. So maybe this patch update is going to help them to some degree. HyDra and Skyz, definitely heavy slayers, and if the cruise missiles are them more valuable, then I guess that helps them to some degree. Whether that's going to make a massive difference, we shall see, but we're really talking about Toronto, we're talking about FaZe, we're talking about OpTic, but it's difficult to have New York Subliners in that conversation right now, as we might have expected to when they got slammed out by the Carolina Royal Ravens and, you know, obviously got beaten by the Minnesota Rocket in that first round game. But OpTic, of course, did actually play against the Minnesota Rocket in their losers round 4 game, whatever it was, basically on the first game of the championship Sunday when they took down Minnesota Rocket to make it through to play FaZe and end up getting top 3. So Dashy has some experience now playing against Lynz. I thought it was pretty funny. Dashy and FormaL playing it together, and FormaL just, you know, he's not afraid to roast anybody at all. Dashy, they kind of said, oh, I'm going to say, like, Lynz is actually pretty good, but Dashy's talking about how certain players in the league, and I think understandably, because they might not be especially well known, they might not really have a big social media presence, they don't necessarily stream or have a YouTube channel and stuff like this, and these players, unless they're really good, are very replaceable. Like, I think a lot of players, you know, go through the blender really because they don't really build up anything while they're a player, and unless they're really talented, which to be fair Lynz is, and others have been as well, like HyDra, I think he's actually got a really entertaining personality, HyDra, but he just doesn't really enjoy making the content, and, you know, fair enough, he doesn't have to exactly, but I think it would help his career and his future to some degree. But, you know, players like that are so good that it really doesn't matter. Some players, though, you know, you're effectively a random in the CDL, and you're a name that only the hardcore fans might remember in like 5 years' time, shall we say. So while they're discussing this idea, FormaL basically says Lynz is an example, and Dashy has to be like, well, you know, he's actually pretty decent. And to be fair, if Dashy says you're decent, that's, I suppose, relatively high praise, but I saw that this is pretty entertaining.
Think about it, would you rather have it like, would you rather be a random? Like, you know, like some of those kids that join the league and like they're like actually like ninjas, because like no one is even like even when they get shit on, no one even knows who they are, because it's actually that low key.
Yeah.
Or like
Lynz.
Yeah, actually, that's insane, because that kid's actually like, that kid's actually decent. Good? Yeah, he's decent. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're like Lynz. Yeah, but like if he was getting shit on, that's such a gamer tag. That's like
no one's gonna care.
Yeah.
No one's going on Reddit and being like, dude, Lynz is the problem. You probably don't know how to spell his name.
Yeah, they're like misspelling his name in like in the tweet.
Lions is fucking
Lions.
He's so low key just because they don't even know how to say his name.
Yeah, Lions, dude.
Lynz has been no doubt the Minnesota Rockets' best player so far. He's been really impressive, I would say, in effectively every single mode. And what I'd say impresses me the most about Lynz is that let's not forget that when HyDra first came into the league, he wasn't exactly a superstar day one. We knew that he was very talented. He had his moments, but it's not like Cold War HyDra was unbelievable. Like rookie year HyDra was not as good as the year after in Vanguard, and he was certainly not as good as the year after that in Modern Warfare 2. So that's the impressive thing for me, is that Lynz is doing this as a rookie. Like aBeZy, I know he's not playing the role that he's expected to play, but he's having the rookie season that you might expect. He started pretty slow, really. He's getting a bit better, and there is promise that over time aBeZy can be, you know, a pretty important player for that Seattle team, and I think he already is. But Lynz has basically come out of the gates flying, right? And he's been really impressive. So if he can continue to improve, there's even a thought, right? Like imagine a world in which like Lynz and aBeZy, and even, I don't know, Cobra or Brezzy or something like that could form a really impressive team, and like a Lynz HyDra SMG duo at some point. I actually think a Lynz HyDra SMG duo, even in terms of roles and dynamics, would actually make a lot of sense. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but just one to have a think about. And I don't think Lynz is gonna, you know, disappear. You know, he's not going to be out of the league, I don't think, in the next year or two. I think he's going to probably be here for the mainstay, just because he's only likely to improve comms, you know, teamwork, all these other things that just make a lot of sense for this guy right now. And there's a clear trajectory towards French players in the league, and when you hear, you know, rookie, young, SMG French player, you think he's probably a man for the future right now. But the other talking point from OpTic has been over their search and destroy, right? It was the key thing that held them back. Of course, there's all the talk about play styles, and should Dashy play like Scrappy? Does Kenny have to be the one to get the hill time? Does Shotzzy need to slow it down? And maybe all of those things can be true, at least in some small part. But a lot of that affects the respawn modes. The search and destroy is where they have their weaknesses. There is a clear move, I would say, towards OpTic being at a decent spot for search going forwards, because Rio is a map that on paper I think should be pretty good for them, given the players they've got. Like Rio sounds like a map that should be pretty good for Shotzzy, right? He's not going to get caught off guard that much. He can make plays. It's a pretty small map. The rival's going to be valuable. I think that makes sense. Skid Row, that it replaced, OpTic didn't play that map. They for sure wanted that map gone from the pool. It was their perma ban. They just straight up didn't like it. So I would say immediately that is to some degree of advantage for the OpTic guys. But at the end of the day, if you find yourself in a 3v3, a 2v2, even like a 4v3 or a 4v2, it's about executing it from then to the end of the round that is the challenge. And I'm not going to lie, the Los Angeles Thieves for the last couple of years with Kenny on the roster had very similar problems to just this. But they did eventually solve those problems. And Kenny, I'm sure, knows how they solve those problems. And they will now have to do a similar thing. Because that's what JP says. They're okay getting first bloods, and they have some decent tactics to bring to the table as well, and their players are good individually in 1vx situations, but give them a mid-round where they have a marginal advantage. It's closing out those circumstances which are the most important things.
What do you think about OpTic SnD in the moment? I've been talking about it the last few days, but once again, it's all about fixing our mid-rounds. Our mid-round, not only decision-making, but being on the same page with each other and what we want to do and just being comfortable with it. Because there was a lot of times where we could be in, let's say, like a 3v3 and it would be a good situation for us, but we're kind of like taking too much time to do it or not really on the same page of what we really wanted to do. So yeah, getting that cleaned up is most important.
So a lot of those things come down to having a game plan to start with. Be like, okay, if we get into a 3v3 in this position, what are we going to do? And also just great communication, right? Because as JP says, sometimes you take your time too much, sometimes you don't take your time enough. And I think, let's say you have a first blood. Shotzzy gets a kill, then he gets traded. 3v3 mid-round, you've got to get the bomb down. You know, do you play it quick? Do you use Shotzy's information that he's just given you to go and attack A site quickly because he said that there's 2 over at B? Or do you say, all right, let's slow it down? Because if you're the attacking team and you're in a 3 versus 3 scenario, that actually is favourable to you, more favourable than a 4v4, because the defense is spread thinner, as basically as the more you get towards a 1v1, 2v2, it favours the attacker more, because in a 1v1, the attacker is favoured because he can go to either side. The defender has 2 things to hold. Generally speaking, in a 4v4, it's more defensive heavy, so every trade usually helps the attacking team, but then of course you've got to decide what to do, which is the challenge. And I know that Kenny talked about this as well, that game plans, communication in Search and Destroy are a key component, and as we just saw there, right, I didn't even look at it really, but 5 in 10 Search and Destroy, that's really what held them back, right? Because against FaZe, if their search was better, they would have beaten FaZe, at least one of the times they played them so far, and that would have put them, you know, then we could have seen if what JP said about their scrims against Toronto actually are true, that they could have been more competitive in that series than they were elsewhere. I do remember actually, because I just looked up Kenny SnD to see what he said on it at the time, and he's roasting Enable here. I don't know if you guys remember the Team Caliber team when it was, I'm thinking Stage 2 playoffs, World War II, when Enable had like the most shocking Search and Destroy event I've ever seen. He was making some faded plays, and that team was just not good in Search, but Enable especially was pretty tragic at it. But yeah, maybe his Search and Destroy prowess has been kind of transferred to Kenny to some degree, because Kenny's not been especially good at that mode so far this year. He's a 0.81 actually, so yeah, Kenny knows he needs to step up in that mode, but in every other mode he's been great. So we shall see if any of what they've been working on really transfers into reality when they play again at the start of, it's just next weekend now, at the start of Major 2 qualifiers. But as we said, the Skid Row gone, Rio in is definitely an on-paper advantage. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.